My name is Joe Shannon. I'm an attorney in Illinois, and I represent people that are badly injured in a lot of different type of cases. But one of the areas of concentration of our firm is folks that are hit by big trucks, semis, 18-wheelers, commercial vehicles, that type of thing. Who am I? I've been working as a trial lawyer for 36 years. For the first 8 years, I represented defendants. That is, I represented insurance companies, large companies, folks that hired commercial drivers, folks that hired other commercial carriers, forklift drivers, all those types of things. For the past, since 1996, I've been representing people that have been injured in these types of accidents. Now, what makes these accidents different than your normal automobile crashes? Well, typically, when somebody gets hit by an 18-wheeler or a semi-trailer, the injuries are devastating and life-changing. And in those types of situations, typically, the insurance company for these large companies has already got somebody there to investigate the crash right after the crash or the day after. And unfortunately, the folks that got hit, the passengers in the passenger cars, the drivers, the people along the road that got hit by this negligent truck driver, they don't have anybody that represents them unless they hire a lawyer. And that's where I come in. Now, let's talk about different aspects of these types of cases. One that's different is that typically truck drivers, semi-trailers, are regulated by federal regulations. One federal regulation is actually beneficial to people that are injured by truck accidents is the amount of insurance coverage that's typically required for a semi or a commercial vehicle. And typically that minimum, which is very low, is $750,000. Now, in Illinois, when you get a driver's license and then you are driving around a vehicle, the minimum level of insurance you're required to have is $25,000. So that's a big gap. It's $725,000 more required for a vehicle that is a commercial motor vehicle, a semi-trailer. Now, is that enough? No. And we have been trying to lobby as a group to have it so that these requirements are raised, because in today's economy, $750,000 for a devastating injury is nothing, especially when there's numerous people that are hurt. So that's what makes these different. Now, does that mean that if you get hit by a semi-trailer that you're going to recover $750,000? Absolutely not. It's like any other case. You can have the most negligent truck driver there is, and for some reason he hits you or somebody else, and that person luckily, and thanks God, is not hurt, walks out and has no injuries. They're not going to recover $750,000. It's only if there are serious injuries are you going to come near that amount. When you are injured, and you're injured or your loved one is injured in a bad way, or unfortunately somebody dies in this type of collision, it's imperative that this person hire somebody that knows what they're doing as far as truck driving cases. So what goes into the value of how much a case is worth, or how much would an insurance company pay, or how much would a jury award in these types of cases? Those are three different questions, but I hope I can give you some insight from my experience. The first thing is, if you've been involved in a bad crash with a commercial vehicle like a semi-tractor, and the semi-tractor is at fault, there are a number of different elements of your damages. Let's talk about the real life ones that you're going to live every day. One of them is, hey, I can't do my job. So you have lost wages. Do you have loss of earning capacity? Say you're a young husband, you have 2 kids, you're in your 30s, and you can't do the same job that you did because of this truck crash. Well, at that point, you have a very serious case. You can't provide for your family. You can't provide for your home. You may lose your home. All of these things, which are very serious. What about all the medical bills? Nobody getting into their vehicle on the expressway thinks that when they get on the expressway that day, they're going to end up owing millions of dollars in medical bills because a truck hit them. Well, if the medical bills are incurred, then the trucking company is on the hook for not only the lost wages we've talked about, but also the medical bills. What most of these cases are about is about your loss of normal life, your pain and suffering, your disfigurement, those types of things. Now, one of the issues that comes in these cases is whether there's enough insurance coverage for the truck when this happens. So, say, for example, a young man in his 30s gets hit and can't provide for his family anymore and has millions of dollars bills. That $750,000 limit for the semi-trailer isn't going to pay for that. And that's a problem that is going to have to be resolved by the courts probably to make sure that the person that gets hurt gets at least some of the money as opposed to the people that are the medical providers or the folks that are paying the insurance companies. Say, for example, you were hit by a company that had unlimited amounts of pockets. For example, say the driver for a really large publicly held company that's a Fortune 10 company, and they had enough insurance coverage to pay you. Well, there's a number of different things that go into it. How bad was the conduct of the driver? Was it enough for the court to impose punitive damages against that driver? I've had a number of cases where we've been able to seek punitive damages against the company for failure to vet the driver properly, failure to even meet the driver before they let the person drive, failure to train them, failure to discipline them. I've had a number of cases where the driver has had over 10 moving violations, numerous complaints by the public, and yet the company never ever disciplined the driver, never took him and tried to train him, just kept him behind the wheel and let him drive. And then he ends up hitting my client at a high rate of speed while texting. And this wasn't the first time that he'd been caught texting while driving his commercial vehicle. In those cases, courts may and shall, and hopefully make a decision that you should be entitled to punitive damages against that driver so that it would teach that company and that driver to never do that again, to deter future conduct and to punish them. These damages are not meant to punish a defendant, but they're meant to put you back in the same position you were prior to that crash. Obviously, if you say you had a very bad injury, you lost a leg, you lost an arm, that is not going, the money is never going to replace that at all. And just in our system, that's the only way we can do that, is ask for a certain amount of money from an insurance company. The number one thing is if you get in front of a jury. And if you're in front of a jury, you get to ask them for, like I said, the medical bills. You get to ask them for the lost wages. You get to ask for them for future medical bills, future lost wages. You get to ask them for your loss of normal life. And if you have a future ahead of you, the loss of future of a normal life. And how about this? All the daily pain and suffering. Say, for example, you have an injury that every step you take, you're in pain for the rest of your life. And there's no type of surgery. There's nothing that they can do to repair that, to make it better. Then you should be able to be awarded that amount for that pain and suffering on a daily basis, as well as any future. I've had cases where, we're talking about future damages of 30 years, and those can be large numbers. And you're hopeful that there's the company can pay that amount, because that's typically the amount that you deserve. So why hire a lawyer in a big truck crash? Well, there's a lot that you don't know, and there's a lot that I don't know about this truck crash that the other side does know. They have a lot of information that you would only get if you filed a lawsuit, because it's their private information. But it's required to be kept by the Code of Federal Regulations. So what would that be? Well, the moment that we file a lawsuit against a trucking company, and even before that, the moment we're hired, we send a letter out to them telling them to keep and not discard, and what we call as lawyers spoliate, which means destruct, get rid of, shred, anything like that. All the stuff that they have, and the stuff that they have is a lot. Nowadays, a lot of the logbooks for the drivers are electronic versions. We ask them for those. A lot of these trucks have, let's call them black boxes, little computers in them that will tell you how fast they were going prior to the crash, how long did it take them to brake, what type of delta was involved in the crash. There's other information with respect to some of these trucking companies have the equivalent of a GoPro that is on the dash that'll show not only the driver, but also what the driver's seeing at the time of the crash. Those things are pivotal for you and your case, because you need to get those. Let me go further with the list. A lot of these companies will have monitoring software of each and every rig that they have on the road, which will tell you how fast they were going, where they were, where they'd been prior to the crash. Folks are required to produce all of the training that was done for the driver, their personnel file. Everybody that gets behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler is required to have a commercial driver's license of a certain rank. In order to get that, you have to have certain training, but also there is other items in their personnel file, which include drug tests. It includes a yearly test, road tests, tests that they took that were within the company. All of these things. Also, what were the company's policies and procedures? In Illinois, for example, the courts encourage companies to have policies and procedures, and to have the companies follow their policies and procedures. And if they didn't do so, it can be evidence of that at this point the driver was negligent. I've had cases where there's requirements for drivers to have a clean driving record, and if they have one or two violations, they've got to get some sort of retraining. If they have 5 or 6 violations, they have suspended for a day or two so they can get more training. All of these things are important to keep drivers on the roadway safe, and that's encouraged by the law. And yet I see over and over and over again that although these procedures are in place, they weren't complied with. And we're seeing a lot of these cases when we have truck driving cases where these crashes are caused within the first 3 to 6 months of the driver beginning to drive with the defendant. I had a case, a very serious case, in which a young driver who was her first or second time driving got lost. And she was moving around her vehicle, which she was not familiar with. It was her first time out around the roadway. And she got lost, and she got confused, and she made some wrong decisions. And she turned left right in front of my client, who was going through a green light, and permanently injured her and changed her lifestyle forever. She was in a nursing home for the rest of her life. So these things matter. The training matters. And you will not get that information unless you hire a lawyer to get to the bottom of those situations. If you want to get some background on what a trucking case is about, or what to read before talking with us, Avoid a Trucking Nightmare is a book that we wrote just for you. And if you want a copy of this, just text TRUCK to 312-847-2428. At Shannon Law Group, I'm available to speak to you, and it's a free consultation. And we'll talk about your case and make a decision together whether or not you need a lawyer to represent you, or whether or not you can just take one of our books and try and figure it out yourself. We charge nothing for that consultation. We want to make sure that you are taken care of and that you are in the right hands.